Alrighty, so this is stage one of the build your own shoe project. So I chose this shoe here. I chose something that I was hoping isn't too complicated, not too many designs, not too many aerodynamic, whatever, just kind of something classic. A classic shoe. This is something simple that's to put on. And I'm analyzing the parts of the shoe. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to build the sole. So you're going to look how thick this sole is, and you're going to see how thick your foam board is, and you're going to times that by whatever. So this is 3/16 of an inch thick. Before I go there, let me just backtrack a second. The other thing I'm looking for is I'm looking for the components, how this is built. Just think, it all comes from something flat. It all comes from whether it's a flat piece of fabric or flat piece of foam. This is actually poured and molded and whatnot, but this is flat material. And this cutout here, this kind of U shape, if it was flat, what would it look like and how would you go about doing that? And there's ways to do just that eventually. Hold on a second. You're going to use your tracing paper, and we'll get into this in stage two, but you use your tracing paper and you basically trace out the shape. And as the tracing paper is flattening out, you're basically drawing the shape. And once you get that shape in there, you're going to add a little bit more so you can have tabs and connect it to the sole and all that stuff. So knowing that, think about what you're going to select. You know, this seems to be pretty simple to put on. It's actually just a piece of leather or pleather, whatever they used, and they just sewed it on. So that's pretty simple. The tongue itself you can add after the fact. The laces is something that you can make pretty quickly. The holes, I said a hole puncher, but you don't need a hole puncher. You can just kind of drill holes through, or there's other ways of going about it. But the sole is tricky. The sole's hard and it takes a little time. But once you build your base, then you can just kind of build the rest of the forms up. So basically stage one is the sole, stage two is the sides, the front and the back, and stage two is the longest, and stage three is the finishing touches. So we're gonna focus on stage one. I'm gonna put the shoe on the side here. And I'm gonna clear this a little bit. You can see my tools here. I have this guy here. This came in your kit. And what's nice about it, you turn this little knob here, and you can slide up and down. You slide in to protect it so nobody picks it up and cuts themselves. And you push out. Now, if you're wondering, like, okay, how do I change this? What's nice about this, all these little, I don't know if you can see, I get really close on an angle, but you can probably see those little tiny diagonal lines. What you want to do is you can get a pair of pliers, you grab it here, you pull it down, and then you snap it, and you can kind of see I snapped a piece off, and it was starting to dull out a little bit, and now I have a brand new corner, and it's not as dull. So that's how you use this, and then eventually it will go all the way down to the end, and then you have to buy a new one of these blades. This is, you can use this forever. You have to buy a new one of these blades. So you could buy those, I think you even sell them at Home Depot. But you probably will get away with just this in this project. Whenever you have something like this, a little safety tip here, I'm gonna have a lot of these little foam core thingies. I'll put it down for a second until I find this. You want to tape it up. You can see I just kind of put it in here. Tape it up real good. You don't want anybody to accidentally swallow or grab it, or if you just throw it in a trash can and somebody grabs the trash can and smushes it down, they might have a little blade stuck in their hand, and that's not a nice thing to do. So once you have that, you have this there, then you can discard it and safely. You're also going to use this too at times. You're going to see how far you can get with this guy, and you're going to see what this guy does. I have a little more control cutting the foam core with this when we're cutting these things, but later on when we get more detail, I might be using this. So I'm just keeping it on the side. I'm not going to use this till the second stage. So I'm just going to throw that over there. I'm done with the pliers. That's basically the only reason you need the pliers was to change that. If you do have a utility knife, they're a little bit more awkward and clumsy and big, so you're not going to be able to have that kind of curvilinear line as well, but you can still get by and do the work. You'd be surprised. The other thing is I have a pencil, a 2B pencil. So I'm going to grab my foam board here. So this was a sheet of 20 by 30 inch foam board. This is the foam board that you had been using for your document work with, and now we're going to use it for a project. Whenever you cut this, because I'm on my dining room table here, make sure you have a cutting mat. I actually have 2 cutting mats because I do, and the nice thing about this is I can kind of lay them both flat, and then I can cut this, and I don't have to think about where I'm cutting and accidentally cut the table. Otherwise, I will hear about it later, and I don't want to deal with that. So, what I did before, in order to cut these out, I took my shoe, laid my shoe down like so, and then I traced around it. But if you can see here, the shoe angles up and it angles up here. So when you use this, you want to push the shoe down like so and trace. And then once you're on the flat part, trace. So you can kind of see I don't want to move the shoe. And then the back, try to flatten that out. All right, I have my shoe template, but you only have to trace this once, because once you cut a piece out, then you take this thing and and then you trace it. And then you just trace around, trace around, trace around, trace around. And you might say, man, how many of these am I going to have to trace and cut? How thick is that? Well, you can find out really quickly. You can take a ruler. I think this came with your kit. I still have the plastic on mine. You can take a ruler, and if you look at this, my sole, the base of this has a high point right here, and it measures exactly 1.5 inches. So if I measure from this side, this measures in 1/16. This side measures in 1/8. So I'm going to measure from the 1/16 because this is 3/16 of an inch thick. A little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. So it's basically 3 little lines on the 16th side. And how many of those, and you can count. You can just count, say, all right, if that's the high point and 1.5 inches, if there's 16 of those lines in 1 inch, then 1/2 inch, there's 8 lines. 16 plus 8 is 24. 3 times 8 is 24, which means you need 8 of these things to reach that. Now, over here, it's not even 1 inch thick. Actually, it is 1 inch thick. So you would only need 3 times 7. No, 3 times 5 is 15. So you need about 5 there. But you might say, well, if I need 8 here and 5 here, what we're going to do is we're going to build up the bottom with a couple layers, and then we start to build up the high points, and you'll stop at the end points. I'll get into that a little later, but the highest point's going to have 8. The lowest point's going to have like 2 or 3. But I'm just going to cut 8 of these out no matter what. And the other thing, you only have 3 of these sheets. If you run out, I mean, they sell them like Walmart, dollar store, stuff like that, but you can get them online pretty quickly. It's foam board. It's a really easy material to find. And I've heard someone online call this cardboard's better looking cousin. So it's just nice, and in terms of variation, it's smooth, it's matte, it's white on the inside as well. So everything's kind of uniform when you finish the project. I've done this before in using cardboard, and I got some beautiful results too. I kind of love the cardboard, the grittiness of it. And they both have different outcomes, but we're going to use the foam board for this one because you have it in your materials, and we're going to go for it. So The next thing, oh, the other thing I was gonna say, make sure when you trace this out, you wanna utilize as much of this as you can. I probably could have gotten another, see this little area that's not utilized? I may have been able to get another piece out of this. Now I have a big shoe, I think it's 11 and a half or 12 or something like that. Some of you are gonna have smaller shoes, so you might have smaller, so you might be able to get more out of it. And then you have two other pieces for the rest of the shoe, which is the top. So you should have plenty. And if you don't, out of the three pieces and you have to buy some more, you make a mistake, not a big deal. It's a cheap material, and everything else you should have or have laying around the house. It should be in your material list. Talk about that later. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna cut this guy. And whenever I'm cutting something that's curved, right? When you cut foam board, first things first is you want a sharp blade. And I'm also pushing out about 2 or 3 of these. It's, I'd say about 3/4 of an inch to an inch pushed out. Gives me a little movement too, but you want a sharp blade. If your blade's not sharp, you will bunch up the foam on the inside and it will start to collect, and it will rip the foam core and it won't look good at all. And a little trick of the trade, whenever I cut this, I follow the line a little bit beforehand. So what I'm doing now, I'm just gonna kind of show you. And I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm just cutting the paper. And basically, I'm just gonna talk about foam core in a second. I'm just concentrating. I'm trying not to lose my line. I'm moving my body around. You can see my left hand is holding the foam board down. And I can't really turn anymore, so I'll just stop. So what I wanted to explain was, let's kind of rip this off here. Foam board, basically, all it is paper, foam, and paper. It's a really simple material. People use it for presentation boards. The nice thing about this, the paper can rip off. So you can really manipulate this stuff. You can score it. I should be really careful with my hands. You can score it and bend it and all sorts of stuff. So it's a really fun, cool material. Architects use this often for building models of buildings and whatnot. It's quick, it's easy. I'm sure a lot of them are using laser cutters and die machines now, but back in the day, this is what they had to do. All right, now I kind of blend right into there. So again, I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm not applying a lot of pressure. What I'm trying to do is just cut the first layer of paper and maybe just a little bit of the foam. And now you've created a rut, meaning that if you find your line, the groove, and then you can just kind of do another one. And you're gonna follow all the way around. And you're just cutting a little bit more. You're kind of cutting through the foam right now. And then the last cut is cutting through the paper that's underneath. So it might take 3 passes, sometimes 4, depending. And it can get a little tricky. But remember, you're only doing, what, 8 of these cuts? Because it's probably the average thickness of your, whatchamacallit? I can already felt I went through there, so that only took me 2. There we go. This might take a little practice. Don't feel like you're going to get it the first time. You can see this is starting to come off. Good. I'm actually putting a lot of pressure down on my left hand here. I can feel it going through because I'm cutting, or I'm into the cutting mat right now. I can feel the cutting mat, which is awesome. The other thing I want to make sure you think about is know where your hand is at all times. Do not do this. This can really injure you. So you can see I just turn this around, and whenever I cut, I pull towards me. You guys have a lot of cutting experience with that first project, the paper project. But this takes a little bit of finagling, and just be really aware and conscious of your left hand if you're right-handed, and vice versa, at all times. Okay, I think I got it out. See that little snag there? Not a big deal. I have a backup plan. So I'm going to put this down over here. I had, hold on a minute. I thought I had something around. Aha. So I have some sandpaper. I couldn't find, I don't know what grit this is. I can't read it on the, oh, this is 100 grit. I think I said buy 150 grit. This is like 320 or 220, I think. It says on the back. So just, oh, this is 320. So the lower the number, the grittier it is. If you ever want to sand your floor, you usually start with like a 30 or 40, 60 grit. This is 100 grit. This is still kind of gritty. So I said like 150 is probably good for doing what we're doing. I don't have any 150 around, but I might get something out of this 320. But basically, I'm just gonna sand the edges of areas that I felt were a little rough. But to be honest, I think I did a good job cutting. So I'm just cleaning it up a little bit, nothing major. See what the 320 does. Oh, that's a little better. I actually like the 320. Smoother. All right, now that I have this, I'm ready to go, and I can start to build these up. So I'll talk about what I did with these guys in a minute. You can see I put a line here, and I made the lines going this way. And I think I'm gonna make a different video about that. But now that I have these cut up, you can kind of see the thickness I'm starting to build. And because, I'll talk about this next video, but you can see this curls up and this curls up. Actually, let me see how much time I've been talking. 17 minutes, yeah, I'm gonna make another video. So this curls up here now because I cut these slices in it, and then I made 2 of them curl up, but it actually curls up this way nice, and then you don't see the slices. So I think I'm gonna go in that direction. And you can kind of see it curl, and I can get that same curl there. So what I would do is I would eventually do the same thing to here, put those striations in, which I'll show in the next video, and then I would put something underneath this to hold it up, something underneath this, and then I would glue each layer and then put a weight down in the middle of something that's heavy, that's in the kitchen, a sugar jar, anything, whatever's around. All right, so I'll make the next video in a minute.